Captain Korlax of the Imperial Dreadnought Zarnak's Claw, had personally presided over the capture. After all, humans were rare, mysterious creatures from the blue planet in the Sol Sector, a sector now quarantined due to inexplicable chaos involving barbecue sauce and sentient ducks. No one dared venture close anymore. But one human had been found drifting alone in a stolen scout pod near the Edgeward Belt, chewing something sticky and unidentifiable. She had surrendered instantly, which was suspicious in itself. Now she sat, legs casually kicked up on the interrogation slab, chewing a piece of gum and blowing a bubble that popped with a cartoonish snap. Her hoodie, some bizarre Terran relic branded with the word Nirvana above a yellow smiley face, was stained. Her hair was a tangled mess, and she was tapping her fingers in rhythm against the cold obsidian table like she was waiting for coffee at a diner. Korlax observed her from behind the one-way plexiglass with growing disquiet. "She has not trembled." "Not once," said Intelligence Commander Glarn, his 5 optic stalks all focused on the human. "Not when we paraded the neural flares. Not during the fear chants. She asked if we had Wi-Fi." Korlax's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. "Perhaps she is defective." "Defective? Sir, she asked me if this was a theme park attraction." Glarn's voice pitched into something like a screech. "She complimented the torture droids. Said they had good CGI." Korlax frowned. His command chair gave a weary hiss as he stood. "Prepare the psychic resonance emitter. Let's see what happens when we project her planet's worst nightmares." Inside the room, Cassie Rivera stretched with a satisfied grunt and picked something out of her teeth. It had been, 2 days since her impromptu space kidnapping? She'd lost track. But honestly, not the worst vacation she'd had. The aliens, tall, slimy, vaguely lobster-adjacent, were clearly trying to freak her out. But they just didn't get it. It wasn't that she wasn't scared. It was just that life on Earth had been weirder. A circular drone floated into the room, glowing red and pulsing ominously. "Oh, cool," Cassie said, pointing. "Is this like a floating Alexa or one of those creepy Roombas?" The drone hummed and projected a hologram. Earth under siege. Fires. Explosions. Screaming. Something that looked like a mutated platypus eviscerating Times Square. Cassie squinted. "That's just a Michael Bay movie. You guys are trying way too hard." The room dimmed. The next projection showed a human mother cradling a child in a burning field while robotic death worms skittered in the background. "Okay, now you're just ripping off Terminator," she said, unimpressed. "Subject remains unfazed," the drone muttered, seemingly confused. Cassie leaned forward, propping her chin on her hand. "You want to scare a human girl? Try showing me student loan debt. Or my ex's Spotify playlist." Behind the wall, Korlax felt his antennae wilt. "She's immune. Utterly. Completely." "She's not immune," Glarn whispered. "She's mocking us. In an empire built on fear, on hierarchical control dictated by trembling obedience, this girl's flippancy was a tectonic rupture." "She must be a weapon," said Korlax. "Some kind of psychological super soldier." The drone attempted one final image, a vision of her own funeral, alone and forgotten, broadcast into the void. Cassie blinked at the image and shrugged. "Meh. We all die. But, if you guys have pizza or something, I'd like that first." The lights snapped off abruptly. Later, in the Imperial Strategy Chamber, the debate was chaotic. "She shows no fear responses. Our instruments cannot read a single spike of distress. She resisted the black hallucination field. She fell asleep during it," someone corrected. The Emperor himself, an ancient, withered being kept alive only by power and spite, croaked via hollow projection from the throne nebula. "This human, she is a threat to galactic stability. Execute her." Cassie, who was still somehow patched into the comm system, cut in. "I can hear you, you know." Rude. The transmission ended in static. Meanwhile, Cassie had made herself at home. One of the lesser crew members, an insectoid intern named Fripp, had taken pity on her and started sneaking her snacks. "Thanks, Bug Bro," she said, crunching something neon green and questionably edible. "You guys really don't have Netflix?" Fripp looked around nervously. "It is forbidden to entertain prisoners." Oh, lighten up. Got anything 90s? Like old sitcoms? Maybe Seinfeld. Fripp tilted his head. Our files contain something called Saved by the Bell. Is that related? Cassie gasped. Fripp, my dude, load that immediately. The next 30 minutes were spent explaining laugh tracks and Zach Morris to a being with 4 brains and no concept of irony. In the surveillance room, Corlax watched the footage in horror. She is indoctrinating our personnel. She gave Fripp a nickname. Glarn cried. A nickname. She called him Bug Bro. Sir, do you know what that means? That's bonding. She's forming a rapport. Corlax's claws twitched. No. We are the apex species. We do not brood. We have to consider planetary quarantine, Glarn said gravely. If she escapes the cultural contamination. She cannot escape. They turned back to the screen. Cassie was now teaching Fripp how to fist bump. The turning point came the next day, when Cassie wandered out of her cell. Not broke out. Wandered. The door had simply opened. Either a glitch or someone on the crew subconsciously wanting to see what she'd do next. Cassie, sipping an orange beverage she refused to identify, wandered into the main corridor like a tourist in a museum. Cool walls, she murmured, tapping on the ship's alloy skin. Kinda sterile. You guys ever consider some art? Maybe some Bob Ross. A pair of guards approached, weapons raised. Cassie raised an eyebrow. Guys, I'm literally holding juice. Is this really a fight you want? The guards exchanged glances, utterly unsure. She gave them a thumbs up and walked past. On the bridge, Corlax stared at the internal cams, frozen. She's loose. She's on the bridge path. Do we stop her? Glarn asked. Corlax didn't answer. His claws were clenched, not in anger, but something close to fear. Cassie arrived at the bridge 10 minutes later, having taken a detour through the ship's hydroponics bay, just looking for snacks, she explained to no one, and entered the control room like she owned the place. She stood there a moment, hands on her hips, surveying the nerve center of the most powerful ship in the Empire. Looks expensive, she said. Smells like disappointment. No one moved. Not the helm crew. Not the tactical overseer. Not Corlax himself. Cassie walked over to the command chair, sat in it, spun slowly, smiled. Nice lumbar support. Y'all ever hear of Herman Miller? Earth chairs are where it's at. You dare take the seat of command? Corlax rasped. I mean, you weren't using it, she replied. Corlax stepped forward, trembling. Human. You defy all logic. You reject fear. You disrupt order. Cassie shrugged. Yeah, well, I got through high school. This? Cakewalk. You want to die? No, she said simply. But I'm not afraid to. You think fear's the only way to survive? That's adorable. Silence. Long tense. Finally, she stood, stretched again. Anyway, this has been real. But I'm kinda tired of this goth-themed cruise. Can someone take me back to Earth? Corlax didn't speak. He couldn't. The silence was thicker than vacuum. Cassie walked off the bridge without resistance, humming something suspiciously like Bohemian Rhapsody. Once the doors slid shut, Glarn whispered, Sir, what do we do? Corlax turned to the others, his voice hollow. We prepare. For what? Corlax stared at the sealed doors, as though they held back the unraveling of the entire empire. For her. Elsewhere in the ship, Cassie found Fripp waiting with more snacks, and a datapad showing a paused episode of Saved by the Bell. You were not terminated, Fripp said. Cassie plopped down next to him. Guess I've got plot armor. Fripp looked confused. Is that a Terran shield technology? She just laughed, and for the first time since her arrival it echoed, loud, real, and defiantly human, throughout the corridors of Zarnak's claw. Somewhere deep in the ship, the Emperor's hologram flickered again. This girl, he rasped. This girl is the beginning of the end. And Cassie? She just wanted Wi-Fi and a sandwich. Cassie Rivera sat cross-legged in what was clearly meant to be a high-security containment chamber, but to her felt more like an empty Apple store. Bright white lighting, glossy black walls. No furniture, no windows, just the occasional buzzing of invisible surveillance tech. She drummed her fingers on her knee and hummed the X-Files theme song, just loud enough to annoy the listening devices. The aliens hadn't spoken to her in hours, which was weird, considering the last 3 days had been one long parade of intimidation tactics, ominous chanting, and overly dramatic lighting. Now they were quiet. That, in itself, was unsettling. She tried to keep her mood up by ranking the crew members on who most resembled which Scooby-Doo villain. Captain Corlax, obviously, was the fish-faced version of Old Man Jenkins. Suddenly, a mechanical voice crackled from above. Subject Rivera. Prepare for Phase 3 of psychological deconstruction. Resistance is irrelevant. Phase 3, she called back. Is that before or after you guys offer me a mint and a blanket? A segment of the wall slid open with a hiss. A group of aliens entered, flanked by floating silver orbs emitting a low harmonic hum. One of them, a tall blue-gray figure with twitching ocular ridges, stepped forward. He wore ceremonial red armor, though Cassie thought it looked more like a repurposed fire hydrant. I'm Grand Psychovator Helk, he said, his voice as smooth as motor oil. You will now undergo the fear extraction ritual. Cassie blinked. You gave yourself the title Psychovator on purpose? Helk hesitated. Yes. Okay, Dr. Psychovator. Let's roll. She was escorted into a different room, darker, colder, with a chair that looked like it had strong opinions about spinal alignment. She was strapped in, mildly annoyed. One of the drones lowered a wire toward her temple. I'm still not signing up for your newsletter, she muttered. Helk stepped forward and activated the machine. We will project your species' greatest existential threats directly into your psyche. We will extract terror, analyze it, and finally catalog it. Cassie sighed. So, basically therapy with more lasers. The machine whirred. The lights dimmed. Her vision tunneled, filled with flickering images, war, famine, loneliness, betrayal. Scenes of humanity at its lowest, broadcast from some universal emotional database. And Cassie? Cassie reacted to exactly one thing. The image of her phone showing no service. Her scream was so loud the drone faltered in midair. Oh my God! Is that a dead zone? A dead zone, she shrieked, thrashing. Am I back on Verizon? The aliens panicked. Data streams fluctuated. One of the orbs exploded midair. A siren went off somewhere, and the restraints unclamped as sparks flew. She jumped out of the chair, brushing smoke off her hoodie. Phew. That was traumatizing. I haven't seen a signal bar in days. You monsters. Helk stared at her, trembling. She resisted all projections, except the loss of communications. Corlax appeared in the doorway, having watched the entire process through a remote link. His expression was unreadable. She fears disconnection, he murmured. Not death, not pain, but isolation from her network. Should we repeat the sequence? Helk asked. Corlax shook his head. No. We've learned something more important. She is not just impervious. She is disruptive. Cassie was already wandering toward the exit. If you guys had just let me keep my phone, none of this would have happened. She turned to Helk. Also, tell your floating Roomba it needs to stop scanning my hair. Boundaries, man. Back in her cell, now upgraded with a padded chair, snack replicator, and, at her request, a lava lamp. Cassie found Fripp waiting for her. The bug-eyed alien, in turn, was looking unusually distressed. I overheard the council, he said quietly. They believe you may be a precursor agent, a mythical entity sent to destabilize order. Me? Cassie asked, raising an eyebrow. Dude, I got fired from my last job for falling asleep during a Zoom meeting. Fripp tapped his claws nervously against the wall. They're planning something. Maybe dissection. Or dimensional banishment. They don't know what to do with you. Cassie leaned back in her new chair, sipping a glowing drink with a tiny umbrella. Honestly, neither did my college advisor. Fripp hesitated. Why aren't you afraid? Cassie gave him a long look. Not mocking. Not sarcastic. Just honest. I am afraid sometimes, she said. I'm human. We freak out about dumb stuff. Giant bills. First dates. Climate collapse. But this. She gestured around. You guys are trying way too hard. It's like watching a theater kid try to be scary with a fog machine and no script. Fripp tilted his head. So you mock the fear? No. I laugh at it, she said. Laughter's our way of saying not today, alien lobster overlords. Fripp stared at her, eyes wide. That is profound. Yeah. Well, I also once cried over a broken microwave burrito. It's a package deal. The door hissed open. 2 guards entered, weapons holstered. Cassie stood up, sighing. Let me guess. New test. Korlax himself appeared, flanked by Commander Glarn and an unusually tall shadowed figure, likely a diplomat or internal affairs enforcer. We will be conducting a cultural interrogation, Korlax announced, to understand the weaponized absurdity of your behavior. Weaponized absurdity. Man, you guys would love Reddit. She followed them into yet another chamber. This one was set up more like a lounge, complete with a central AI hologram, a large projection screen, and an audience of scientists, psychologists, and military officials. Cassie plopped down on the single chair in the center, lit by a spotlight. Glarn activated the AI. We will now display various Terran behaviors and request commentary. A video clip played. Humans screaming on a roller coaster. Why do your kind simulate near-death experiences for enjoyment? Glarn asked. Cassie snorted. Because screaming's cheaper than therapy. Another clip. 2 people arguing over something called pineapple pizza. This appears to be internal conflict. It's tradition, Cassie said solemnly. We divide ourselves on the real issues. Next, a man punching a vending machine. Cassie leaned forward. That machine ate his Doritos. He was morally obligated. The aliens whispered among themselves. Notes were taken. Some simply stared, baffled. Cassie smiled. She could feel it. This wasn't just fearlessness anymore. This was psychological unraveling. The Empire, built on hierarchies of logic and terror, couldn't process something as simple as human nonsense. The AI asked a final question. Is it true your species voluntarily engages in karaoke? Buddy, we invented emotional chaos, she replied. Have you heard a drunk sorority girl try to sing Celine Dion at 2 a.m.? The AI flickered. System error. Paradox loop engaged. A nearby console sparked. The lights dimmed. Korlax stepped forward. This is not sustainable, he said coldly. You are spreading disobedience. Our own personnel are changing. Cassie gestured toward Glarn, who now wore a backward hat and had Wailelo written on his notepad. You sure it's me causing that? Korlax narrowed his eyes. Perhaps you require isolation. A void cell. Cassie didn't flinch. Whatever. Just let me bring my lava lamp. Glarn leaned toward Korlax, whispering urgently. Sir, the AI just started quoting The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. It's infected. Infected. With her culture. We ran diagnostics. It tried to beatbox during the council meeting. Korlax looked at Cassie. What are you? I'm just a girl from New Jersey, she said, grinning. We're kinda built different. Korlax stepped back. For the first time, he didn't speak. He left the room, cloak swirling behind him like a storm cloud. Cassie turned to Glarn. Hey, you guys got chips? Later, deep within the ship's nerve center, a dozen high-ranking officials gathered in panic whispers. She's uncontainable. She's infiltrating our logic systems. Some of the younger crew have started dressing like her. Korlax stood at the center, fists clenched. This is more than containment, he said. This is contagion. Back in her upgraded cell, now featuring a snack bar and a playlist of 90s bangers, Cassie lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling. You think I'm a threat, she murmured. But I'm just bored. Her voice echoed slightly. Or maybe that was just the sound of something cracking in the walls of the most ordered civilization in the galaxy. She reached for her drink and smiled to herself. They still hadn't figured out the real problem. She wasn't trying to break them. She just wasn't playing their game. And that more than any weapon was how revolutions began. Panic did not come naturally to the Galactic Empire. Its institutions were thousands of cycles old, each cog of its vast machinery calibrated by generations of order and control. But since the arrival of the human girl, Cassie Rivera, the system had begun to stutter. And in a civilization where predictability was law, stuttering was as good as apocalypse. Captain Korlax stood at the central command console of Zarnak's Claw, reading the latest transmissions with growing dread. Planetary governors were reporting unrest. Cultural purity servers were failing to suppress Cassie pattern behavior. Hollow memes of the human girl sitting in his command chair, captioned with "chill like Cassie," had spread to 17 sectors in under 42 hours. "She lounges in authority's seat," one report read, "and the youth see it as gospel." Korlax grimaced. "She's become a symbol." Glarn, standing beside him and wearing a visibly fraying officer's sash, nodded stiffly. "Rebels on Morvax 5 are chanting her name during raids. Our propaganda networks attempted to counter with fear-based broadcasts." She laughed at the tagline, "The human who brought fearlessness," and posted a video dancing to it. "She what?" "She danced, sir." With commentary. "I'm not a brand, but thanks for the merch." It's now trending under the tag, #Galactic cringe. Korlax pressed his claws to his temple. "She's uncontainable. I should have terminated her the moment she stepped on my ship." "You tried, sir. Multiple times. And somehow, every attempt results in more influence. She's like entropy in a hoodie." Glarn hesitated, then pulled up a video clip on the central display. "You need to see this." The footage showed Cassie in the galley, surrounded by young crew members, aliens of various species, ranks, and clearances, teaching them how to play hacky sack using a synthetic nutrient ball. "Just use your foot, yeah. Like that. No, don't use your head, Graal, you're going to knock yourself out. Okay, there it goes." Someone laughed. Then another. Then a half-dozen were stumbling around, giggling, trying to keep the ball in the air, while Cassie clapped and cheered like a soccer coach with caffeine in her veins. The laughter was genuine, uncoded, unrehearsed. Korlax slammed a fist against the console. "Our flagship has become a social experiment." "She's not even trying, sir," Glarn muttered. And that was the problem. Cassie hadn't come with a plan. She didn't have a weapon or a secret agenda. She was just a human with stubborn indifference and a refusal to submit. And that, to the Empire, was more dangerous than any coordinated rebellion. The Empire was fraying at the edges, and fraying was contagious. On the desert world of Balzorin, a trio of resistance members spray-painted a mural of Cassie, giving a thumbs up with the words, "Fear is a choice. Sass is eternal." In the ultra-dense hive cities of Krell, alien teenagers dyed their shells neon colors and started speaking in half-remembered Terran slang. One was overheard shouting as if during a military curfew enforcement. And on broadcast relay moons across Sector 9, unauthorized streams aired a deepfake sitcom titled Everyone Loves Cassie, featuring re-edited security footage of her on the ship with canned laughter and theme music. The Council's attempts to suppress the phenomenon only worsen it. Cassie had become the galaxy's most accidental viral infection. Meanwhile, Cassie herself had no idea she was teetering on the edge of becoming a galactic legend. She was playing Uno with Fripp and 2 other crew members, Rax, a tentacled janitor with a poetry addiction, and Zune, a crystalline tactician who had recently taken to wearing Hawaiian shirts. "You can't stack draw 4s, Zune. Don't make me revoke your Earth card." Zune, whose species communicated in ultraviolet flashes, blinked rapidly. Fripp translated, "He says your rules are tyrannical." Cassie smirked. "Better get used to it. Democracy's a wild ride." The door slid open with a hiss. A new figure entered, tall, cloaked in woven plasmic fabric, her features shrouded, but presence undeniable. Everyone stopped playing. Korlax entered behind her. "Human. This is Enforcer Tyrell of Internal Security." Cassie didn't stand. She sipped her neon drink and waved. "Sup?" Tyrell's voice was low and sharp. "You are hereby accused of cultural destabilization, mimetic subversion, and reckless emotional contagion." "That sounds serious," Cassie said. "Do I get a lawyer? Or like a musical montage?" Tyrell ignored her. "You have inspired disobedience, mocked authority, dismantled fear. Look, it's not my fault your empire was built on emotional blackmail. That's on you guys." You've infected our networks. Our youth chant your idioms. Cassie leaned forward. Tell me something, Tyrell. If I'm such a threat, why haven't you thrown me into a sun yet? Tyrell hesitated, just for a fraction of a second. I'll tell you, Cassie continued. Because you're scared. Not of me, exactly, but of what I represent. Of what happens when people stop buying the whole fear equals control thing. Corlax looked away. Cassie stood up. I didn't start this fire. I just refused to be impressed by the sparks. Tyrell turned and exited without another word. Corlax remained. He looked at her, not with anger, not with hatred, but with something dangerously close to curiosity. What are you really after? He asked. Cassie thought about that. Honestly? A decent shower and a breakfast sandwich. Corlax gave a single hollow laugh. Then he left. Later that night, in the strategy core of Zarnak's Claw, an elite covert strike team was assembled. Their mission: silence the human before her influence became irreversible. They were the Shadow Talents, silent, deadly, fluent in 17 forms of warfare and 48 dialects of silence. They dropped into Cassie's chamber at 0300 ship time. What they found was unexpected. Cassie was in the middle of brushing her teeth. She froze, electric toothbrush buzzing in her mouth. Yo, she said, toothpaste foam around her lips. This a dream or y'all real? The lead Talon lunged. Cassie dodged instinctively, stumbled into a wall, and pressed a button. The room's lights turned pink. Careless whispers started playing. Wait, 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 she yelled, arms up. Time out. Y'all can't just who attacks someone mid-mouthwash. One of the Talons hesitated. Another blinked. Is this Terran combat banter? I'm in pajamas. Cassie yelled. Can we at least fight to a better soundtrack? The squad froze. There was something about her tone, exasperated, unimpressed, unafraid, that cracked their momentum. She wasn't just resisting. She was undermining the entire premise of their existence. Then she did something no one expected. She offered them juice boxes from the mini-fridge. Look, she said, handing them out like peace offerings. I'm not even mad. You're just doing your job. But maybe, reflect a little, yeah? You're elite assassins trying to kill a girl who's been quoting Seinfeld for a week straight. One of them sat down, removed his mask. He was young, tired, and clearly questioning his life choices. We've been trained to extinguish threats, he murmured. I'm not a threat, Cassie said gently. I'm just a reminder that fear doesn't have to be default. The leader lowered his blade. Minutes later, the entire squad had turned in their weapons, taken selfies with Cassie, and announced their plans to start a synth-funk band. They called themselves the Chill Rebellion. The next morning, Corlax was briefed. They failed, he asked, eyes wide. They converted, Glarn said, clearly dreading the report. She gave them juice and an existential breakdown. Corlax sat heavily. She's not a virus. She's a vibe. The Empire didn't have protocols for that. On 1,000 screens across the galaxy, a new broadcast emerged. Unauthorized, glitchy, charmingly chaotic. Cassie stood before the camera, hoodie pulled up, sipping from a novelty mug that said world's okayest threat. Hey Galaxy, it's me, the human you're freaking out about. Look, I didn't mean to start a cultural revolution. But I'm also not sorry. You've got emperors and enforcers, but you're scared of me, a girl with sarcasm and snacks. That says more about your system than it does about me. She grinned. If your empire's that fragile, maybe it deserves a little shake. Then she turned to Fripp off camera. We done? Cool. Let's go teach the bridge crew how to play Twister. The feed ended, but the spark had already leapt the wires. In the command chamber, Corlax stared at the empty screen. His empire, mighty, ancient, vast, was unraveling. And the girl who started it? She was currently trying to organize karaoke night. It was, perhaps, the first time in recorded history that an entire civilization realized they were no longer in control of their own narrative. They were in hers, and she was just getting warmed up. Corlax stood alone on the darkened bridge of Zarnak's Claw, hands clasped tightly behind his back. The stars beyond the observation pane shimmered in deceptive calm. Inside the Empire, however, chaos surged like a breached reactor core. Civil disobedience had become a trend. Memos were intercepted filled not with tactical updates, but crude hand-drawn images of Cassie, sunglasses on, striking mock-heroic poses above captions like "Don't obey, slay." Entire fleets had gone dark, not out of rebellion, but apathy. The Empire's most fearsome weapon, psychological suppression, had failed. And it had failed not because of an attack or a grand conspiracy, but because of one girl. One completely unremarkable human girl. Cassie Rivera had become the viral symptom of a civilization grown brittle. The crown jewel of obedience was cracking, and Korlax could no longer ignore that the fault line ran straight through the center of Zarnak's claw. He activated the holocom and summoned the High Council for an emergency session. Flickering images of aged leaders, glimmering with ceremonial projection filters, filled the chamber. "She must be removed," croaked High Chancellor Kelv. "She is the core of this anomaly." "You cannot remove what has already become myth," Korlax replied, the weariness in his voice more honest than he intended. "She is not just a human now. She's an idea. We created this galaxy," another counselor hissed. "We do not lose control." "No," Korlax murmured. "You maintained it. Fear maintained it, until she reminded the galaxy that fear can be laughed at." The council fell silent. And then, in a last desperate bid to assert control, they gave the order Korlax had feared for days. "Terminate her." Korlax said nothing, didn't argue. He simply cut the transmission. He was tired of being the villain in someone else's comedy. Cassie was in the ship's observation garden, barefoot in the synthetic grass, watching binary suns chase each other across the sky like two light bulbs caught in a cosmic argument. She had a sandwich in one hand and Fripp's homemade smoothie in the other. The quiet felt wrong. She knew something was coming. Fripp approached, antennae drooping. "They've issued the final order." Cassie sighed. It was only a matter of time. "I tried to change their minds," he said. She looked at him, smiled softly. "You already did. You think I didn't notice you replaced half the ship's operating sounds with friends' quotes?" Fripp blinked. "We were on a break," he said gravely. Cassie laughed, but the humor faded. She stood, brushing crumbs off her hoodie. "All right," she said. "Let's finish this." She didn't run. She didn't hide. Instead, she walked straight to the command bridge, doors opening before her as if the ship itself had started choosing sides. When she entered, Korlax was already there, flanked by a squad of armored guards. The air was heavy with tension, the kind that presses against your ribs like a slow compression chamber. Yet Cassie's steps didn't falter. "Here we are," she said, arms spread. "Big finale. Am I getting vaporized, flung into a black hole, or just awkwardly escorted off the premises?" Korlax stared at her, unmoving. "You have dismantled the foundations of our rule without lifting a weapon," he said. "Our hierarchy fractures because you refuse to be afraid." Cassie tilted her head. "I didn't come here to destroy your empire. I came here because I hit the wrong button on a stolen escape pod and got kidnapped by space lobsters." Korlax's lip curled. "You cannot grasp the magnitude of what you've done." "Sure I can," she said. "You built a system that depended on everyone agreeing to be scared. I didn't. Turns out all it takes is one crack in a dam to flood the field." One of the guards stepped forward. Korlax raised a claw to halt him. "Do you truly intend to end us?" he asked. "No," Cassie said simply. "You're doing that yourselves." He looked at her, really looked, and in that moment he didn't see a threat. He saw something far worse: freedom. Unstructured, unpredictable, and fundamentally human. Cassie took a deep breath. "But I also don't want to die for a joke I didn't tell." Korlax studied her. She met his gaze without flinching. And then, without warning, the entire bridge shook. Lights dimmed. Consoles sparked. An alarm began blaring, not the usual disciplined rhythmic tone, but a distorted audio loop of Cassie singing "Living on a Prayer," off-key. "What in the gravity well is that?" Glarn shouted, bursting in. Fripp appeared moments later, panting. "The AI, it's gone fully, Cassie. On screen, the main interface flickered, and Cassie's face appeared, smiling, pixelated, wearing a paper crown. "Hey kids," the AI said at her voice. "Today's lesson: overthrowing empires with memes and stubborn vibes." Chaos erupted. Cassie turned slowly to Corlax. "That might have been my fault." Corlax stared at the screen, then at her. The guards didn't move. And then, for the first time in the history of the Galactic Empire, the captain of its most powerful ship laughed. It was quiet at first, bitter, choked, but real. And it grew. The guards looked at each other, uncertain. Glarn looked nauseous. "Lower your weapons," Corlax said. They did. Cassie blinked. "Wait, what?" "I no longer serve a system that trembles at jokes," Corlax said. "I'd rather go down laughing than clinging to a script that no longer fits." She stared at him. "Are you saying I'm not getting vaporized?" "No," he said. "You're getting a starship." Minutes later, they were on the hangar deck. A sleek, silver craft prepped for launch. A scout-class vessel, small but fast. Corlax stood beside her as the final checks ran. "I've reactivated the jump routes to the Sol system," he said. "You'll arrive on Earth in approximately 3 hours." "You're letting me go," she said, still stunned. "You've already won," Corlax said. "But I ask one thing." "Shoot. Tell your people not to come back." Cassie stepped onto the ramp. "We won't. Trust me. We're crazy, not suicidal." Corlax watched her board. The engines roared to life. And in a blaze of blue light, she vanished into the stars. Cassie landed in a Walmart parking lot in Kansas. Because, naturally, Earth. The re-entry alarms had scared a few cows and triggered some low-flying drone swarms, but otherwise, no major incident. The scout ship autopiloted itself into cloaking mode, and Cassie stepped out in her Nirvana hoodie, hair a mess, face smudged with cosmic soot. She walked to the nearest gas station, bought a slushie, and borrowed someone's phone. She texted her roommate back. "Long story. Tell my boss I quit." Then she made a TikTok. Just her, standing in front of a cow, holding the slushie. Caption: "Got abducted. Started revolution. Came home. Still no Wi-Fi." It got 11 million views in 3 hours. 2 weeks later, back in the ruins of the Empire, the official flag was quietly taken down. A new symbol spread, a simple image, a smiling yellow face, wearing sunglasses, with the words "Chill Harder" underneath. On distant moons, children wore Earth hoodies and held impromptu talent shows. Corlax retired. Fripp started a podcast. The Shadow Talons went on tour. And in classrooms across the stars, teachers ended their lectures with a phrase. "And remember, don't take tyrants too seriously. They hate that." On Earth, Cassie lay on her couch, watching reruns of Xena, Warrior Princess, and eating mac and cheese straight from a pot. Her phone buzzed constantly. News outlets, galactic radio hosts, diplomatic envoys. She ignored them all. Eventually, she sighed and looked at the stars outside her window. They seemed smaller now. "Next time," she whispered, "I'm bringing snacks for the ride." Then she tossed her phone aside, sank deeper into the couch, and pressed play. The screen lit up. A spaceship hurtled through space. She chuckled to herself. "Amateurs.